Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Kinda Opinionated podcast. If you didn't know, I'm your host, Luke Sharon, and I'm kind of opinionated. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. John Grimm. He is currently running for Kootenai County Sheriff. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, thank you for being on my podcast today.
Thank you, Luke. Thanks for having me.
How's your day going?
It's going well. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, so I hope I don't cough too much.
We'll be fine. Well, today we're going to be talking about a couple of topics which I think are very relevant in our communities right now, if that's okay with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get started then. Okay. I know you own a manufacturing company. Can you tell me what you currently do and what's the coolest thing your company manufactures?
We manufacture a lot of products, small specialty items, components for the medical industry, defense industry, and some aerospace work. And I would say one of the coolest things that we've ever done was we were approached by the Department of the Treasury a number of years ago, and we, along with one other company in the United States, bid on a special project that was for an anti-counterfeiting measure.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't stuff. This is a type of anti-counterfeiting measure that foreign states to fight what foreign states do, like pallet loads of $100 bills coming out of China, things like that.
Yeah.
So we worked on that project, and it was pretty interesting. It was actually a classified project, and I know some of the secrets about money that very few people know.
That's cool. Well, if you like win sheriff, do you or like win Kootenai County Sheriff, are you going to continue running your manufacturing company?
I won't continue running it. No, the county sheriff job is more than a full-time job.
Yeah.
And it would be dishonest for me to try and do both. So my son Adam has really stepped up to the plate during this election. As a matter of fact, the election's been a great test for us because I think I've worked maybe 10 days since July, and the company's doing well and he's doing well, and so during my tenure as sheriff, he'll take over.
So you're pretty confident that you will win, right?
Well, of course, yeah. I'm not in this to lose.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So why do you want to be county sheriff in the first place?
Well, that's a question sometimes I ask myself. No, but all joking aside, this is my home, and my kids' home. And Kootenai County has been good to my family. It's important to all of us that we have excellent law enforcement. And honestly, I researched the other candidates because it would be easier for me to get behind someone and support them like I've done in the past in other elections. I even interviewed some of the candidates, and I didn't find them up to the task. And so I feel a certain obligation to do what I can do to improve our home here in Kootenai County. And fortunately, I'm at a time in my life where I can afford to perform this vital public service.
Well, I support that. Well, what sets you apart from the other candidates running to become sheriff?
I'm an outsider. I'm not a career cop. I do have law enforcement experience. I was a reserve deputy up in Bonner County. But I've been a business owner for nearly 30 years continuously. I know how to handle a budget. I also understand small town law enforcement better than someone who spent their entire career at an agency larger than any sheriff's office in Idaho. This isn't LA or Dallas. Here a deputy might arrest someone he later sees at Super One or someone he went to high school with. I want to expand on that outsider concept.
Yeah.
In the 50 United States, 3 states do not elect county sheriffs. It's Alaska, Connecticut, and Hawaii. That leaves about 300 counties and 3,000 county sheriffs.
Why don't they?
It's just their form of government. They don't like. I don't think Alaska even has counties. And sadly, there are a few bad sheriffs. We just had one sheriff removed from office and convicted of some pretty serious crimes in southern Idaho. But more importantly, there are very few sheriffs in U.S. history that stand out as exemplary leaders, men and women who stand up for what is right, always. And I think that's because we keep doing the same thing. We elect the person who has been there the longest, the guy who's found his way to work the longest. And don't get me wrong, I'm in no way trying to disparage a 30-year career in law enforcement. That is a very noble thing, but it does not necessarily prepare somebody to lead the organization.
Well, do you think? Well, as you said that, something you said made me get reminded of term limits. Isn't there no term limits for sheriff?
There are no term limits.
Do you think there should be?
As a concept, I'm against term limits, and I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
We have term limits. It's called voting. And people like you who want to educate themselves on the people they're electing aren't going to make the same mistakes that we continue to do in the United States. When I hear that a senator has, served for 40 years in the Senate, that's too long.
Yeah.
And why we keep electing them is because people do not educate themselves they vote by name recognition only, and that's a shame.
Yeah.
So as a concept, I'm against term limits. In reality, they're probably a good idea.
So, yeah. Well, good response, because that was just like a off the top of my head question. So,
that's a good question.
What would you say the county sheriff position entails? What do you do? What's your plans?
Well, the sheriff's job is actually defined by state statute and state law, and it can be broken down into roughly 5 key areas. Number 1, the sheriff is a principal law enforcement official in the county. He has a legal duty to preserve the peace, make arrests, bring people before judges, conduct investigations, traffic and highway safety, etc. And that all breaks down into what we call the 5 basic duties of police: to protect life, liberty, and property, serve the people, enforce the law, provide information, and render first aid. In addition to that first category, he enforces Idaho boating laws, operates the county jail, driver's license office, which is something that everybody can complain about, and various additional duties such as animal control, and in Idaho we have livestock brand inspection, major catastrophes, etc. But the sheriff has deputies to perform all of these tasks, but he is the person that's responsible for the overall operation and the direction of the department. He's the face and the spokesman for the agency. He also manages the budget that's set by the county commissioners.
So, you said that the sheriff runs the animal control? Is that?
Yeah.
So, I have a question for you. So,
Okay.
We have 2 dogs. Would it be possible if we gave them if we gave you guys a picture of them, and you could just drive to our house and drop them off, because once in a while they get caught by animal control and we have to go and get them. So I was just wondering, if you actually become Kootenai County Sheriff, if you could do me a favor.
I would do that for you, Luke.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I would do that for you.
I appreciate it. Okay, so why should teenagers...
Wait.
Oh, wait.
How often do your dogs get out, though?
That's a good question. Well, my mom wants me to say once, but we have a couple people that don't leave, that leave the door open.
Oh, okay.
And my dogs are always on an escape route.
Well, you know what's cool about the time that we live in is, for relatively little money, you can put a GPS collar on your dog and find him. A buddy of mine just did that with his shepherd, and his shepherd's name is Tugger, and he keeps getting loose, and so he put a GPS on him so he could figure out why the dog was getting out. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, our dogs, I think they're just stupid. So because
Are they small dogs?
No, they're pretty large. They're just not intelligent. Well, one of them is pretty intelligent, and then the other one is just not smart at all.
Well, I have a smart dog, and smart dogs run away too. So
yeah. Well, one of our dogs, they're scared from running outside the house since this winter. Well, around that time was because we went to watch a movie. I forget what movie it was, and my little brother, I'm blaming him, even because I don't know. I'm just blaming him. So he let the door open, and we went into the car, and they followed us all the way to the theater, not like the one that's close around here, but the one that's way far back, and they
Really?
got all the way to Walmart, and they got caught by animal control, and they had to spend the night at the, what was it? Oh wait, the county jail. And what? No, the county jail. Sure, let's just say that. Well, yeah. So moving on to the next question. Why should teenagers and normal people who are good citizens be interested in the sheriff election candidacy?
Well, teenagers, I think, should be interested in all elections because, I remember when I was 13, and I know it seems like a long ways off, but you're going to be 18 before you know it, and you're going to have the opportunity to vote. And it's not just an opportunity or a right, it's a responsibility. If you ask most people on the street what form of government we have in the U.S., most will say a democracy.
Yeah.
And that's not what we have. We have a republic. You think about the Pledge of Allegiance, right?
Yeah.
And to the republic for which it stands. Having said that, you're not electing leaders, you're electing representatives, but these representatives are not required by law to represent the will of the people, and some will lie to you. And that's why it's important for everyone, teenagers especially, to learn about whom you elect. You want to buy a house someday, I assume, right?
Yeah.
You want to buy it in a safe area. You need good law enforcement for that. You want to raise children of your own, have good schools with decent tax structures. You also need to think about electing a sheriff that doesn't break the law himself.
I would hope so.
We spoke about that earlier,
Yeah.
and sadly, it happens.
That's kind of ironic.
Yeah, exactly. And if you elect someone who lies about their past or is dishonest, will that result in innocent people being punished? So,
Have you ever committed a crime?
Oh, I probably have, but I do not have a criminal record. But
Okay.
I have speeding tickets. And
I'm going
those
to
types of
believe you
things.
on this one.
No, you can look that up.
I'm joking. Well, this is more of a serious topic. So a question that seems to be, unfortunately, be consistently relevant in our political climate. In 2019, Idaho was the 5th highest suicide rate, 58% higher than the national average. Do you think that there's a direct answer to why Idaho's rate is so high? And if you're elected a Kootenai County Sheriff, could you do anything about it?
I don't think there's a direct answer, and that's probably the toughest question you're going to have for me tonight. I think there are numerous reasons why. A lot of people talk about kids and having it easy nowadays, but I think sometimes we set the bar too high, and we forget as adults what we did as kids. There's a tremendous amount of pressure on young people nowadays to perform academically, socially, morally, and adolescence is a difficult time. Kids make a lot of mistakes during that time, embarrassing mistakes. And sometimes as parents, we need to remember that. And, there's been times like with my own son, where he's come to me with something. I'm like, oh, kid, is that all? Yeah, I did that same thing too. Don't worry about it. Don't do it again. That's substance abuse can be a factor with the proliferation of narcotics and drugs everywhere. It's foolish to assume that that's not part of the problem. But I think a big problem is the lack of social and family support, and that's one of the reasons why both Sarah and my wife and I, Sarah's my wife, volunteer with scouting. Because there's a lot of young men in this county that can benefit from having good, positive, family type environments.
Why do you? Sorry to interrupt, but why do you think that's so high around here?
I really can't tell you, and in doing research, there doesn't seem to be a definitive answer for it. I know that Utah has, I think, the highest rate in the nation for teen suicide. So I wish I could answer. As far as what you asked me, what I could do as sheriff, there's really not a whole lot other than making people aware of things, like mental health issues and things like that. But I can give you some advice, though, and this is something that I've learned over time. When someone contacts you out of the blue that you haven't heard from in 1 or 2 years, and you get a text and says, "Hey, Luke, what's going on?" You drop what you're doing at that time and go and offer them the attention that they're seeking. Because I can't tell you the number of times as an adult that I've heard friends say, "Yeah, the weirdest thing, I heard from a buddy I hadn't heard from in 5 years, and he texted me, and before I got a chance to text him back, the next day I heard from his wife that he killed himself." and there's some connection there. So that's something we can do just as fellow humans when we see, that possibly somebody's suffering. But I wish I had an answer for you on that. I do not.
Yeah, I think there might be a couple reasons why the suicide rate is really high, but to be honest, I have no clue why it's so. Why we're
here?
Why we're 58% higher. That shouldn't be.
You would think where we live and the type of lifestyle that we live, and it's really a pretty affluent area. You would think it would be lower.
Do you think we need to do some research on why it's so high and survey these young people instead of having these adults talk to other adults about why
Absolutely.
It's so high?
I think we need to survey young people and then believe them when they tell us things that make us uncomfortable as to what we're doing as adults.
Because I see a lot of these adults writing books about young kids, but the young kids or the teenagers the books are directed towards adults.
Mm-hmm.
And so it isn't really solving the problem. It's just, hey, this is what my idea is, and I'm not a teenager, but I was. So
yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, what do you think the biggest issue in our community is currently?
I think it's the out of control growth that we're seeing here in Kootenai County and North Idaho. Poor planning at the city and county level, and the problems that is bringing from more drug trafficking, more crime, more traffic, more aggressive drivers. We've seen a definite change in traffic behavior in the past 5 years that we didn't see prior to that. And so I think, yes, heroin and methamphetamines, they're all bad problems, but I think the biggest thing that's facing Kootenai County is the out of control growth and what that's going to bring. If you look at the property crime rates in Spokane County, they're many, many times higher than what they are here in Kootenai County, and they're just over that imaginary line at the border.
So what's changing? What's changed from the last couple of years?
The culture here in the county is changing. As more people move, they bring the types of issues that they escaped from, and not knowing, I think that they are contributing to some of that culture change here. So I hope that we don't see a major increase in crime, but I'm certain that we are. And the new county sheriff is going to be prepared if he's going to succeed in combating that.
So, what are you going to do? If that's the biggest issue, in your opinion, in the community, what are you going to do about it?
Well, if you're talking about growth, there's not much the sheriff can do about limiting growth. That is up to the county commission if it's something that has to do with growth in the county, or the individual city councils and what they allow as far as unfettered growth. What they do need to be aware of is, along with that growth, if you build a subdivision with 500 houses, you're going to have to hire more deputies, and it's going to cost money. And those subdivisions should be the ones to pay for those additional deputies and infrastructure through impact fees, which is something we don't have currently in Idaho.
Yeah. So on to another. Well, thanks for your answer. On to another question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Recent studies show that a normal human brain stops developing between the ages of 23 and 35. In Idaho, you can own a gun at 18. Is this an appropriate age to own a gun or even an assault weapon, in your opinion?
Probably not for everybody, but the fact of the matter is that's the law, and the Second Amendment protects our right to keep and bear arms.
Yeah.
There are people that shouldn't be driving at 18 or 20 years old, or 50 years old. I'm a huge supporter of the Second Amendment. However, having said that, I've seen a lot of adults that are incredibly careless with firearms.
Yeah.
Guys my age. I just went to a gun show Saturday and was sitting talking to a group of friends, and a fellow came by with his pistol holstered in a way that he muzzled everybody that was sitting around him in the torso. And by muzzle, I mean pointing the barrel. And that's just something you absolutely don't do. It's in poor taste, it's careless, and it's dangerous. And this person was oblivious to what he was doing. And it's probably because he didn't have good education as a youth.
So if you don't think we should raise the age to a higher thing, or make it so that you can only have a certain gun at 18 or a certain type of gun at 18, do you think more efficient background checks are more sufficient than doing that?
You really have to look at the Bill of Rights as a unified document that protects the rights we're born with. For example, in the Second Amendment, I know that's a hot topic for young people.
Yeah.
But it is protected by the Second Amendment, as is religion in the First Amendment, right? The First Amendment protects 5 of our basic rights: freedom of speech, press, assembly, religion, and the right to redress the government. Would it be reasonable for someone to say, we want to require an application or a background check to attend that church, or the other church across town that doesn't require a permit? I mean, you really have to look at those the same way.
Well,
because they're both protected activities, and some things we disagree with. I mean, there's some things of free speech that are just in poor taste.
Yeah.
But it's like these clowns that we used to have here in North Idaho walking down Sherman with their swastika signs.
Yeah, those.
It was an awful a time in the period here, but it was something that was protected.
So, in my opinion, I don't think that churches are the same as firearms. So, I think that we should probably have more extensive background checks on people that are young people, or old, or even older people, to have background checks on them, or to have a background check on file a better one than.
I'm assuming that most 18-year-olds have cleaner records than most 28-year-olds, just because of time.
Yeah.
How do you decide in advance if someone is going to commit a crime? I mean, that's a dangerous precedent to set.
That's a good question, and I don't think it's up for me to decide. I think it's up for the people that are running this country currently to decide, and the people who are going to run for this country, and people who are going to be running this country.
Which is going to be, hopefully, you one day.
Hopefully me. Which, So, I don't know. That's a good question.
I'm just yes, people with nefarious backgrounds or evil people should not be, and that's the way the law is now. Felons can't own firearms, for instance.
Yeah.
But as far as arbitrary background checks to exercise something that is protected under the Second Amendment, it's just unconstitutional.
Yeah.
And as distasteful as that might be for some people, you have to look at it along the same lines as some of our other freedoms.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your answer, and this is the big deal breaker question right here. Okay, this is the question that will make people decide if they're going to vote for you or not.
And you know what? If I lose any voters over this question, so be it. I'm going to stand by it.
Okay. So, what's your favorite type of pizza, and do you think pineapple belongs on pizza? Because this is the most important topic.
I would say one of my favorite pizzas is the Vincent over at Flamin' Cork. And no, pineapple on a pizza is an abomination.
Oh.
And if you want to talk about background checks, if you ever want to own a firearm in this county and you put pineapples on pizza, don't tell me you don't put ketchup on hot dogs either, do you?
Oh no.
Okay, good. Because
No.
men don't do that.
Oh no. I only put mustard on my hot dog.
Good. That's the way they're supposed to be.
Okay. Well, I completely disagree with you on the pineapple thing. Pineapple does belong on pizza. You lost everybody's vote.
That's the way politics is supposed to be, right? We are in complete disagreement, but we're both smiling over it.
Just be like, pineapple's good.
Oh, actually, okay. Let me give you my politician answer.
Okay.
Well, I feel that pineapple serves a purpose on pizza. And should somebody desire to have pineapple, I think it's their right to enjoy the pineapple on the pizza.
That is the best answer I've ever heard to that question. Well, thank you, Mr. Grimm, for being on my podcast today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
This was fun.
Well, I really appreciate you coming and actually responding to my email. And, not thinking, oh, who is this kid? Why did he email me?
Hey, you know what? There's something I want to add on that. I've felt the same way through this campaign because, like I said in the beginning, my law enforcement experience was a number of years ago, and I'm not currently in law enforcement. But the number of professionals, police chiefs in the area and other sheriffs and things like that have treated me with respect because they look at me as a bona fide candidate, that really kind of makes me understand maybe a little bit what you're thinking, or what you're feeling. So. No, when you called me, it's like, this kid has a podcast? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you actually taking the opportunity to be on here because some people won't. So, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you guys for listening to the Kinda Opinionated podcast. Please tune in once in a while and listen to it.